What if I told you that using AI tools every day is quietly destroying your ability to focus, even though it feels like you're being more productive? I've been studying entrepreneurs who use AI constantly, and there is a disturbing pattern. They can't sit with difficult questions or complex problems anymore without reaching for Claude or ChatGPT. And the scary thing is that it feels like productivity because you're getting more things done faster, but your brain is actually atrophying like a muscle that never gets challenged. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how daily AI use is rewiring your focus system and the protocol to use AI as a weapon instead of becoming lazier and dumber. For a little bit of context, I'm Manu, and over the last 4 years, I've worked with some of the biggest players in the space like Jordan Platten, Thomas Gannett, Matt Shields, Nathan Nazareth, and hundreds of entrepreneurs to help them optimize all aspects of their performance, to help them unlock peak performance and operate like mental athletes. If we were to compare a founder's deep work block back in 2019 or 2020, it will look very different from a deep work session from today. Back in the day, you used to focus on something long enough and get a lot more deep work done versus today where you're sitting down to do deep work, but your deep work consists of 100 different tabs open and talking to one Claude instance and then talking to ChatGPT. You're basically teaching your brain to become distracted and chase quick wins instead of being able to focus for long periods of time on one task at hand. So this is teaching your brain to be more scattered, to not hold your thoughts in your memory for long term without blanking. And basically, anytime you think about something, you can't hold to it without typing it into Claude or into your AI tool first. And all of this is causing something called the AI fog, which is basically like brain fog, but it's basically the daily use of AI tools and how it has shaped your brain. It's causing you to struggle to focus for long periods of time, have decision fatigue, and basically whenever a thought or a problem becomes difficult, you resort to AI. Now, the reason this happens is because of a term called cognitive offloading, which basically means you use things to make problem less mentally demanding. Or in other words, the brain literally weakens the circuits that it doesn't use. And especially your working memory. Your working memory is a use it or lose it scenario. So if any idea that you're coming up with, you're instantly throwing it into your AI tool, well, you're basically teaching your brain to not use its working memory. Your brain is basically wired to help you survive, to help make the choices that are going to increase the likelihood of your survival. That means finding shelter, finding the best and easiest food, and making the choices that are going to actually consume less calories. Because from how we were wired back in the day to increase the chances of survival, your brain has to spend the least amount of energy to do certain things. So if you have to walk 15 miles to get one source of food versus walk 2 miles to get another source of food, your brain automatically chooses the path of least resistance. In the same way, when your brain first discovered this AI tool that you're using, discovered that I can make this decision without spending energy versus I can actually think hard and deep and spend a lot more calories but come up with a better solution, well, chances are that you're probably going to go with the option of least calories spent. So this tool has now become your baseline, your default, because your brain loves saving energy for survival. It's not your fault, it's the way that your brain is wired throughout millions of years of evolution. The other reason why this is a problem is because of your dopamine baseline. You see, every time you type something into your AI tool and you get a response or you get a fix, it's like another form of scrolling. You're basically giving a prompt, getting a response. With every response, it's novelty. Something new is going to happen, and you think that you're going to build. Or it's just something that you didn't expect. So that is novelty, and for your dopamine system, that is a spike in dopamine system. And even though it feels productive, it feels like you're doing stuff for your business or for your work or for your life, you're actually causing your dopamine levels to go lower and lower and lower. Because every time you're getting consistent dopamine highs, your baseline levels of dopamine will drop and drop and drop. And the level of your dopamine at any given part of the day resembles how motivated you are, how focused you are, how creative you are. And so if the AI you're using to be more productive is causing your dopamine levels to drop and drop and drop progressively, well, chances are you're going to be less and less motivated to do the actual work and hard thinking, which is going to lead you to use more of the AI tool. So it's basically weaponizing your valuable and intricate dopamine system against you. Now, the other problem, which I briefly mentioned, is that the area of your brain that is actually responsible with deep thinking and attention and basically doing long sessions of focused work without getting distracted, which is called your prefrontal cortex actually gets weaker and smaller. It's a muscle that doesn't get trained. You don't put the reps in, and as a result, it gets untrained. So think about like your biceps, right? You go to the gym the first time, you do bicep curls, you grow the biceps, and you keep building the muscle, or you maintain the size of the muscle over the years after training. But what happens if you stop using the bicep? It probably gets weaker, and it probably is going to cause it to lift less weight, and it's probably going to go smaller because you're not using it. So your body doesn't have a reason to keep it strong and keep it big the same way as all the muscles of your body. So in the same exact way, your prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for your attention, it gets weaker, and as a result, you're not able to control your attention, and you're not able to focus for long periods of time on one thing without opening 47 different tabs and 4 Claude instances and ChatGPT on the side and Codex and all those tools that you're probably using to orchestrate and do work that you deem productive right now. To show you how crazily dangerous this is for your focus and your brain, there was a study done in MIT that actually tested 3 different groups of people to see how activated different areas of their brain were depending on if they used AI or didn't use AI. And there was a group that was using ChatGPT, there was one group that was just using Google, and there was another group that was just using their brain. And the outcome was to have them to write an essay. And what they found was that the group that was using ChatGPT and AI had the lowest cognitive activation and neural activity out of all the other groups. And even worse than that, after the essay was completed, the ChatGPT group was basically the least capable of remembering things from their essay compared to the brain-only group. And there have been multiple studies done in the last 2 years that show that high AI use literally reduces your critical thinking and your problem-solving solution, and specifically knowledge workers. So you're watching this video, if you're an entrepreneur or a mental worker, it's literally causing you to think less critically and to be less capable of solving complex problems. And look, you might be sleeping 8 hours, you might be eating a good diet, exercising, having a good active routine, but if you still feel like you're not performing at your best, you're not clear with your thoughts, you don't have as much focus as you would like to have, it probably is because you're having about 200 AI interactions through the entirety of your day. And so you're doing all those things for your health that greatly impact your performance and your focus. Don't get me wrong, but the way that you're conducting work is training your brain to be lazy and to not think hard and to not focus. And by the way, if you need help to perform better and to have more focus, increase your work output, as I told you, I've worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs in the last 4 years to help them through a cognitive blood work-led process operate at their peak of their capacity and operate like mental athletes. So if you need help with that, I'm going to leave a link in the description that you can click and get help from me if you want. I'll show you the process that I follow with my clients and how we can install all those different protocols into your life to not only optimize your AI usage, which is very relevant right now, but also take control of all the different aspects of your routine, diet, hormone optimization, and recovery to operate like a machine and double or even triple your work output and productivity. So if that's interesting, click the first link below and let's get back into the video. Now, how do you actually solve this, and how do you use AI properly to not let it actually destroy your focus and productivity, but instead use it as a competitive advantage, as a weapon to get a lot more work done, but without getting distracted and turn your brain into mashed potatoes and make it weaker? So basically, the first thing is the 90-minute morning rule, which basically means for the first 90 minutes of your workday, basically, you need to complete a deep work block. So instead of jumping into your first work block and the first thing that you do, you open your ChatGPT, your Manus, your OpenClaw, your Claude Code, and you start prompting it, do one deep work block on the most important part of the day. It needs to be one thing specifically. It doesn't have to be one thing and another thing while your Codex or Claude Code is working and you're scrolling on your phone while you're waiting for it to give you the output. It needs to be working for 90 minutes uninterrupted on the most important thing of the day that requires mentally demanding work. Now, a few of the things that this is going to do is, first of all, going to train your brain to hold its focus for long periods of time, and it's going to do that by training your prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex gets trained by repetitions, and the strongest repetition you can do is fighting or deliberately and mindfully holding your attention to one thing for an extended period of time. The other thing that this will do is that it will actually reset your dopamine baseline, because if you're deliberately trying to do something that is hard and boring, and basically you're focusing on one task at hand for a specific amount of time, it's going to be dropping your dopamine baseline to a healthy and sustainable level that makes everything else that you do later in the day more interesting and more fun. So instead of jumping between task to task to task and end up getting distracted 15 times along the way, you actually turn your brain into a weapon. So whenever later in the day you come across a difficult problem that requires thinking, you're able to think and you're able to solve the problem, and you're not just outsourcing your cognitive offloading to AI all the time. Now, on top of that, the second thing that you need to do is, for a period of about 14 days, you need to do a dedicated dopamine reset protocol, which basically means that because of the extra stimulation that you're adding into your life, into your work day, as a result of using AI, you need to do some damage control and reduce the stimulation from other areas of your life. Meaning, when you first wake up in the morning, the last thing that you should think about is checking your phone and opening your phone. Your dopamine threshold is basically set from what you do in the first hour to hour and a half after you wake up. Not your workday particularly, but after you open your eyes in the morning. And most founders that I talk to and I help and I work with, the first thing that they do is they open their eyes and they get straight into either doom scroll mode, or they open their phone and they get to work mode, like literally in the first 2 minutes. What this does is that it basically sets your dopamine bar for the day. If it's very high, like what we just explained with checking your phone first thing in the morning, it's basically teaching your brain to look for stimulating things and random dopamine hits for the majority of the day. So when you sit down to work, no wonder that the only thing that gets you going and gets you excited is prompting on your AI. So the dedicated dopamine reset protocol basically means for 14 days you cut out the stimulating activities for the first hour to hour and a half in the day. Instead, you do hard, boring things. You can spend your time, like I like to do and I like to tell a lot of my clients to do, which is very effective, to do a morning routine that requires a little bit of boredom and difficulty, like going to the gym, working out, no phone, no music, hydrating yourself, getting exposed to sunlight, doing movement. All those things are pretty boring, but also reset your dopamine baseline and calibrate your dopamine threshold so that when you sit down and work after an hour, you are actually way more sharp, way more focused, and basically primed for deep work and longer sustained attention. On top of the first hour to hour and a half of the day, for the remainder of the day, you have to basically lock your phone and limit your external stimulation from your phone. Now, there are a few different methods to basically making it impossible to get distracted from your phone. The first method is use something like a device called Brick, which basically means you lock your phone and it needs like an RF code to unlock your phone. And this Brick device is basically making it impossible for you to get distracted from apps from your phone, because the apps are locked until you actually go and scan an RF code with your phone. And you can make it difficult for yourself if you give it to your accountability partner, to your wife, to your friends, if you throw it out of the window, if you throw it at the sea. You get the idea. So that's the first option. The second option is getting a sort of a lock and locking your phone inside of it. The third thing is just literally putting it in your car or outside your room. And the least favorite option is something like cold turkey, I think it's called. Like apps like that. I personally have Opal on my phone, but what I found with myself and a lot of people included is that you can easily bypass Opal and just wait for 5 seconds or 15 seconds or 1 minute, or even uninstall the app in different instances. So just making it difficult for yourself to get distracted and removing it outside of your brain or your peripheral vision as an option entirely is the best way to go. And the other thing is working in 90-minute blocks. So your brain follows something called the ultradian cycle. And the ultradian cycle is around a 90-minute cycle that runs in your brain every 90 minutes, and it allows you to focus in peak performance focus for 90 minutes. And it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to enter that work block, that ultradian rhythm, and around after the 90-minute mark, you wedge out of it. Meaning, if you try to sit down and work for like 2 hours at a time or 3 hours at a time, you're basically kind of like sabotaging and trying to work against that natural cycle of your brain. And as a result, instead of you working for 90 minutes, getting the maximum out of those 90 minutes because that's how your brain operates, and then decompressing for like 5 to 15 minutes to recover from stress and then go back into the 90-minute mode, you're basically bypassing the rule, and as a result, you're becoming less effective. You can't recover that well from that. And if you try to like skip the breaks and the structure of the 90 minutes, you might feel like I'm working more hours because I'm not taking a break, but in reality, you're ending up less effective and less focused and more tired. And it's something that you can't compensate with a break later in the day. You need to follow the 90 minutes followed by 5 to 15 minutes for decompression, recovery from stress. And then that is going to allow you, even though you took some break in between, and it's going to take you another 10 minutes to get into flow state, it's going to allow you to get so much more work done in those 2 90-minute sessions that you would otherwise get in 5 hours of basically constant work. And when you do use AI, after that first 90-minute block of the day in which you are basically dedicating all of your attention to the most important thing of the day, which is one task, you're going to work in context. Like basically you're going to work and you're not going to do 5 different tasks or projects at once. What I like to do, instead of opening multiple Claude sessions for different projects, you're going to work with different Claude sessions, yes, but it's all for the same task. Let me just tell you, for example, if you're coding a landing page and you have a Claude instance prompting it about that specific website, instead of while you're prompting Claude and it is like working your commands and your prompts, you're waiting for it to give you the output, instead of going to another project and working on like a video edit on another tool or in an app, for example, or in some kind of like ad tool, you should use this other instance to work on different parts of the website in the same task. But let's say the one Claude instance is basically customizing the fonts and the designs of the website, while the other Claude instance is basically for the copy of the website, and then the other Claude instance is for the browser and the URL and the hosting. So you get the point. I mean, it's not perfect what I just said here because the examples might be different, but the point is that instead of context switching all the time and killing your attention, you should focus on one thing. Even if you're using Claude or if you're using an AI tool that helps you become more productive, that is relevant nowadays, use it in the appropriate way to not destroy your focus and give yourself ADHD. Because the thing that gives people ADHD is context switching. And even if you're not diagnosed or born with ADHD, you're giving yourself ADHD if you're living your life in a way of context switching. And while this is a super powerful tool that we all have the power and the gift of using nowadays, 99% of people are using it in the worst possible way, and it's giving you ADHD and makes everything else that you're doing aside from working with those AI tools impossible. So I hope this was useful, and I hope this gave you some food for thought. If you need help with your performance and to fix all these different areas of your life to operate at your maximum potential and perform like a mental athlete, I will leave a link in the description. The first link in the description will actually show you how I've helped hundreds of entrepreneurs, including people like Jordan Platten, Thomas Gannett, Matt Shields, Nathan Nazareth, unlock peak performance with my cognitive bloodwork-led process to help them dial in their focus, energy, work output, and get to a level of performance that allows them to scale harder. And if that's interesting, you can then book a call with me to walk through how we can apply this to your own situation and see if I can help you specifically. That being said, I'll leave you to it, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace.